You know the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? Well, if some things are broke, you probably want to fix those. And in the case of The Division 2, there are some things that work just fantastic and other things that have me a little bit worried. I was playing the private beta throughout the course of this weekend with many different friends and getting their opinions, their feedback. I heard from you guys, and here is what I have to say on the thing. The long and short of it is, this is more of The Division. If you enjoyed the first game, you probably will get a lot more out of the second game. If you were somebody who was on the fence about Division 1, then there may be some really subtle changes in The Division 2 that pull you off the fence and go, you know what, now is my time. I really like what they did here. But if you didn't enjoy The Division 1, I don't think there's anything, at least from the outset, that's probably going to pull you in. The good, they have a great working model with The Division, and after its entire lifespan, I think a lot of people can confidently say that The Division ultimately became a good game. It had a terrible loot model at the beginning of its lifespan that saw a lot of the players leaving and never coming back. I was one of those players who eventually did revisit the game like a year and a half later, going, oh wow, they did a lot of great things to this. It's in a pretty solid state. So when I mean they had a good working model, they being massive, with The Division 2, they didn't overhaul it. They didn't pull a vanilla Destiny 2 where they went to the drawing board on concepts that didn't need overhauls. And that is a great thing when it comes to looter shooters. A lot of times, you need a long lifespan of the game and a good set of data from the community to make changes in an ongoing state that addresses what the actual gameplay loop is going to be like. So again, they didn't go back to the chopping board and reinvent stuff they really didn't need to. PvP in this game will provide probably a lot of long-tail replayability for those who enjoy it. I was never a giant Dark Zone fan in the original Division, and the Dark Zone in Division 2, I spent a very small amount of time in it, but I'm not sure if that'll be my main play space. The bad, however, is technical issues galore throughout this beta, and maybe the fact that the game hasn't changed all that much, at least in its outward appearance, is enough to keep you from wanting to purchase this game. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this. If you're just watching this video from a gameplay perspective, you may be thinking, oh, this looks pretty much the same, but when you actually sit down and play it, the feel of the entire game is completely different. Your character moves quite a bit slower, and the emphasis on tactical gameplay is that much more important in Division 2 than it was in the first game. First game, you could get around, just blasting people away, making use of a bunch of animation glitches, and not having to utilize the cover system all that much. Throughout my experience with the beta, at least in D2, it required so much more thoughtful positioning. You needed to use the cover mechanics, and it seemed a lot more akin to pop out, shoot, get your shots in, and then rotate so that you're not getting flanked upon. You needed to use the cover, and you would get downed by enemies a lot quicker. Hey, bullet sponges, you remember those from the first game? A lot of people do, and it was sort of a, roadblock for many people. And it's still here, however, they've gone about it in a little bit different way. The tankier enemies have body armor or pieces of armor on them that you can shoot off, which then allow them to become much more vulnerable to damage cycles. This is still, well, if you didn't like it in the first game, I'm not going to say it will resolve the problem, but I liked it. I thought it was a subtle change that made things feel a little bit better. The gunplay is where things shine, at least for me. Weapons actually feel like they have a unique purpose at this point, where, as in the original Division, there was a clear line in the sand between what was good and what wasn't, and players would gravitate towards overwhelmingly good and then just ignoring the overwhelming bad. It seems like in Division 2, each weapon has a specific purpose at a specific range, and you're going to want to have a kit that allows you to utilize it in the proper setting. That's one of the biggest compliments I can give this game, because honestly, in Division 1, I just felt like whatever weapon you were using didn't really determine your gameplay. It was more so, what's the good gun right now? Let's go get it. From my experience with the beta, I wrote down that it feels like there's probably going to be a decent chunk of content here for new players as you're leveling up your player, as you're going through the campaign the first time, and as you're wrapping up most of the side content. Ubisoft has said, I believe 40 hours or so is what the main campaign slots in at. I would imagine this is going to be a little bit quicker for some and a little bit slower for others. That matches up my original Division 1 playthrough, I think was about mid-20-ish to 30 hours, and that felt like a meaty chunk. That's something I'm looking forward to. The storytelling in this game, at least in the beta, did nothing to really grab me. Favorite moments are when there's world building in the form of audio logs that you find on the street or conversations that you overhear. The actual cutscenes themselves seem generic, bland, and just uninspired, if I'm being totally honest. The one element of the gameplay loop that really jumped out at me as something that needs a bit of refinement are the new abilities, a lot of which, at least on the offensive side, are cumbersome to use and are so slow when you're trying to target specific enemies that it almost seems quicker and more useful just to fire your weapon rather than having to individually target people using the E key. I don't know what it is on console. It seems like that can be fixed with tuning and overhauling. And while we're here talking about the cutscenes, let's pivot to the art design of this game. Everything from the music to the visuals, how does it stack up? The original Division blew me away with just how many small details were littered throughout the city. I spent numerous hours actually just combing through the vastly detailed alleyways and storefronts of New York, and just the subtle things of snow falling and the reflections and the glows off of lampposts was something that was so cool. And when I look at Washington, D.C., it is an ultra-detailed play space, and the game still looks great, especially fire. The fire explosions they have in the Division games look so darn good. However, everything in this game is so yellow and green. I don't like that palette choice. Just the tone that they've placed across the whole visual look of the game is not something that is appealing to me. It's ultra subjective, I know, but I remember loving the just colors and the tones and the palettes that were in Division 1, and everything I've played and seen since, Division 2's come out has just more enforced lots of yellows and greens, which that's fine, it's just not my favorite personally. The music feels a little bit generic, which is unfortunate because there were some very memorable tracks in the first Division game that enhanced that atmosphere of the game, the tension amid the city as it's tearing itself apart. However, there's one thing here that is super sweet that more games need, and that is a photo mode. I love it when games include photo modes. It does so much for filmmakers, machinima people, and just lets you capture moments and really enjoy the work that the artist had put into this game. And then that brings us to technical issues, and I'm just gonna level with you right here. I'm tired of betas. I think betas are actually negatively impacting these games. I understand maybe it's helpful for the developers to root out server problems, to find issues that only a large source of people are able to identify. But man, it is putting a rainy cloud on these games when they release. I mean, look at Apex Legends, cool, came out of nowhere, releases, works pretty darn well, has very few issues, and yet Anthem and The Division 2 are both just buggy builds that make me go, I wouldn't buy these on day one. I would wait until it's proven they've gotten rid of these things. I'm not the only one that experienced many bugs in The Division 2. Yes, there are some funny ones, but there were frustrating ones as well, and this brought up a lot of bad memories. In the original Division, there were bugs that never got fixed. There were glitches and things that lived throughout that entire game's life cycle, and that makes me very nervous for The Division 2 when I saw how, well, there just wasn't the polish on this build, at least not to the degree that I was hoping for. One of the missions, an enemy spawned within the geometry, and we couldn't complete it. Going up and down ledges is, well, hit or miss, to be certain. I've heard of multiple performance issues regardless of the builds that people are using, even ultra high-end builds just having memory leaks and frame slowdowns. And then from a few of my console buddies, they were just saying the consoles are experiencing huge frame slowdowns in certain areas. Does that mean it will be bad upon release? Maybe not, but it does emphasize the point that you should wait, not pick this thing up on day one, and just wait and see. Wait and see what that build looks like upon launch. But to round that whole thing out, ultimately, I think The Division 2 is going to provide for players who enjoy the Division gameplay loop probably a really good game. It seems like they've done so many small, nuanced changes across the board that it is an improved Division experience. I like that they didn't go back to the drawing board to completely overhaul it. I don't want to see another Destiny 2 vanilla situation where you're changing things that you spent years to refine and get to this point. I can also understand the player who's like, this doesn't do enough for me to pick the game up. Ultimately, when it comes to investment-based shooters or investment games, these perpetually online, evolving play spaces, waiting never hurts, and a lot of times you only benefit as the player. From a monetization perspective, yeah, they're already selling a season pass for $30, and you get the DLC a little bit early, but we don't even know what that DLC is just yet. There's a lot of unknowns with The Division 2. I want to step out on a limb and say I think this is going to be quite a good game for those who enjoy this gameplay loop. But at the same time too, there are enough factors making me a little bit worried, especially on the technical side, that I need to encourage you all to just wait and see how the final build comes out of the oven. Did you play in the private beta this weekend? If so, let me know your story, your feedback, your thoughts down below. And also, if you're a Division player who enjoyed the first or maybe didn't, what's your story and why? Sharing those experiences does help me when I create these videos, so thank you guys very much. And thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel. Follow me over on Twitter at BBKDRAGOON. The insanity that is the month of February continues, so thanks for the support and thank you guys for watching these videos. It means a lot to me. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll check in with you again very soon.